Hello readers, I'm the Avid Reader and today we're reviewing World War Upsetting the Balance, written by Harry Turtledove in 1996. So this is the third installment in the World War series where lizards have invaded the Earth, aliens known as the race, and they are fighting against humans who have been united now against them. And this book occurs in the second half of 1943 and atom bombs start being used more and more by different countries, these so-called not empires. So before I continue, there will be spoilers in this review. So like previous reviews on this book series, I'll first go through the characters of the race and then go through the characters of the humans. So let's begin. The book starts strongly. The book starts with the higher officers of the race reacting to the Soviets having detonated an atom bomb. So Atvar has called a meeting of his ship lords, and Straha, his principal rival, proposes to have him removed from his position. Now this is unprecedented, but Straha points out that Tossevites are very dynamic, so it's time for the race to be dynamic also. So Kirill, the second in command, so you got Atvar, the fleet lord, highest, you've got Kirill, the principal ship lord, and then you've got Straha, which is the head of his faction. So Kirill carries out a vote of whether Atvar should be removed or not, and a vast majority vote yes, but it requires 75% of the ship lords to vote in favor, and it's only like 65% or something like that. So Atvar remains fleet lord, and he is preparing to take out his vengeance on Straha, who says, no, you're not gonna get a chance, I'm getting out of here. So he, along with some other members of the race, are starting to defect towards the humans and surrender. Straha goes to the United States. Atvar summons Molotov and tells him that if they use any more atom bombs, then there will be reciprocal repercussions. And Atvar orders the invasion of the United Kingdom. And the UK warns that if they do this, they will experience horrible weapons. And they say that it will not be nuclear weapons, but it will be something else. And it turns out to be chemical weapons. So you could say from this point forward, you're getting a feeling that the race is not really going to conquer Earth. So they're advancing into Great Britain. A lot of Brits are mobilized as infantrymen, but the chemical weapons are really hurting the lizards. Because remember, the lizards are pretty much naked, and it takes a while for them to get gas masks, so it kills them in droves. Another character of the race, he has a bit more of a happier turn in this book, Tirth. So he's been a captured race officer in Japan, and the Japanese really treat badly their prisoners, but when on a train it derails and he successfully escapes, but he is a ginger addict, and he starts flying plane missions all around and shooting stuff. And he flies to different places, so he goes to continental Europe, to the UK, and to the United States. Those countries at least. So we get to see some flying missions, and he is addicted to ginger. Usmak, who is the driver of a Land Cruiser crew, is happy with the crew he has. So he has Skoob, a gunner, and then he was his Land Cruiser leader, Neyas. And eventually they are transported to Siberia. And you can see that Usmak, who is addicted to ginger, is becoming more cynical and thinking the race may not really succeed in conquering Earth. And Neyas and Skoob, they are much more loyal to the race, much more unquestioning, so they ignore that. But one time their Land Cruiser explodes, Nejas is wounded, and to get him to safety, Usmak gives him ginger, which reveals to his clean crew that he's a ginger addict. So now Nejas is also a ginger addict. Skoob, he turns his eye shirts away, but he disapproves. They get re-signed to Siberia, and one time Nejas is killed by a sniper, and Skoob is hurt by bomb fragments and eventually dies from his wounds. So Usmak is driving the Land Cruiser away, back to base, and when he realizes that Skoob is dead, and Nejas is also dead, he's enraged and he's on ginger. So the unquestioning spirit of the race is displaced by this ginger addiction. So he goes into base and he screams, "This is horrible, why did we start this war, we want to go home." A lot of the other people of the race on this base, They agree. Some of them are addicted to ginger, but not only those who are addicted to ginger, but a large portion of the race crew on that base agree that this war was a mistake and we're getting killed like flies and things like that. And Uzmak is armed. The base commander comes in and says to stop this and that Uzmak should place himself under arrest. Uzmak says no and shoots the commander, and now Uzmak is the de facto leader of the first race mutiny. We get a fourth perspective from the race now, Thomas. So he has gotten to see that a baby is growing inside Liu Han in China, and a few days after it is born, they take the baby away and raise it in captivity on one of the ships. Thomas is an officer and he's in tensions with another one called Tesrek or something like that, and he's raising this baby. He calls it a little ugly. He at first doesn't really like raising it, but he starts to like raising it more and more, and his position shifts from I'm doing this for science to it's actually kind of funny because the baby laughs regularly. So now you got a baby that's being raised by the race. So a human baby learning to speak the race's language, which is a unique experiment. And Atvar, meanwhile, he's getting these calls. There are atom bombs being dropped from time to time, which really changes the game. It upsets the balance. So moving on to the human characters, there are a bunch. We get a couple more perspectives, I'd say. So back in China, Liu Han, her husband Bobby Fiore is dead, and she has had her baby taken away. So now she's enraged and really starts collaborating with the Communist Party and escapes from the camp where she is, goes to Peking with the help of communists, starts organizing terrorist plots. So Ni Ho Ting is the communist leader in that area. He blows up a large building. He also is blowing up these game shows that the lizards find interesting and attend, and these are animal shows. Ni Ho Ting says, we're putting a camera in these boxes so you can film this experience, but in reality it's a bomb. So a bunch of high-ranking lizards are killed, but also a lot of innocent civilians, and Ni Ho Ting has some remorse, but he believes it is necessary for the communist cause, and he is beginning to develop a relationship with Liu Han. Back in Europe, you've got Mordecai Analowitz, who has become a partisan. He's fighting with the help of Poles and Germans. He meets Friedrich. They are partisans. Eventually, they get captured by the race. Eventually, they escape from that camp. And while visiting one of the towns in Poland, which has a lot of Jews in it, one of the Jews recognizes Friedrich. And here you get one of the great scenes in this book. This book has a lot of amazing scenes, fight scenes. It really shows why people have hatred against other people well. So Turtledove does that well. So the Jew recognizes Friedrich. Friedrich turns out to have been part of the killing squads when they came into Poland. So I believe it's Einsgruppen or something like that. So he has executed a lot of Jews, and he almost killed this Jew, but recognizes him. The Jew's family is dead. Mordecai proposes that they should take care of this through some Jewish court. Friedrich refuses and tries to escape, but is executed on the spot by a couple of Jewish guards. So Mordecai is back to being alone again, and he goes into Lodz, and chemical weapons are being used by a bunch of countries now against the lizards. Once he has to go undercover when there is a chemical weapons attack there. Then he's making a call to the Germans conspiring against the lizards, and Nussbaum, which is a loyal Jew towards the lizards, notices him, and they get into a fight, and Nussbaum is knocked out, and to not have it revealed that Mordecai is an anti-lizard partisan, they ship Nussbaum literally to the gulag. So that's a hard-hitting part kind of, because Nussbaum, this Jew lawyer to the lizards, he's not really a bad guy, but he's on the lizard side. And here's the thing I keep thinking in this book. They keep saying that the lizards are worse than everything. I would say absolutely not. I would rather live under the lizards than the Soviets or Nazi Germany or Japan. So the lizards are authoritarian, sure. They're maybe quasi-totalitarian, but they're not genocidal totalitarian. They do not have a hatred against groups of people. they just view things in cold-blooded strategic sense. They do not kill for pleasure. So I cannot really understand how the Jews are prepared to collaborating with the Germans. I mean, I kind of understand because it's humanity united against the lizards, but still, if you're in Central Europe, the lizards are much better than the Soviets or the Nazis. And we see how the Japanese treats their prisoners. So I would say that the lizards taking over some parts of Earth in this World War II context is a good thing. Anyway, moving on, you've got Moshe Russi, who's a BBC broadcaster now in London. When the aliens invade Britain, he becomes a medic for a short time. We get to see Eric Blair several times in this book, which is George Orwell, for those who don't know. Harry Turtledove likes to use the real name of some authors who are on their pen names when they write their books. So that's interesting. The Brits eventually proposed to Moshe Russi, we should send you to Palestine, aka Israel, which is a protectorate under the British, who are considering to secede and join the lizards. And they want to send Moshe Russi there to the Holy Land to convince them not to. So he, his wife, and his son take a submarine and then a boat, and they're on their way to Palestine in the Mediterranean. During all this time, by the way, you've got a bunch of atom bombs being dropped a bit everywhere. There aren't that many dropped, but you still got a few. You've got his cousin David Goldfarb, who also is an infantryman for a short while in Britain before he returns to the RAF. Over in Central Europe, you've got George Bagnall, who's this mediator in Pskov, and the Germans and the Soviets are actually listening to him, and the Germans are going to run out of supplies soon, and the Soviets are happy that they're going to have to take orders from them eventually, because for now the Nazis have the equipment, so they've been the senior ranking partners, and now they may be subjected to the Soviets eventually, like George Shultz is, for example. And he's mediating this. You've got Ludmila Gorbunova, the pilot. She, along with George Shultz, are sent over there. She's a pilot and he's a mechanic, and George Shultz enjoys to kill. So you got Tatiana, the Russian sniper, who's attracted to George Bagnall, but he's ignoring her. His friend Jerome Jones is uncomfortable with this, and eventually she starts screwing George Shultz, because both are psychopathic killers in a sense. So they're perfect for each other, and Gorbunova finds out and doesn't really say anything. And she has kind of a liking to George Bagnall, but she doesn't really want to be with him for now, at least, because she still loves Heinrich Jäger. Speaking of Jäger, he drives a bunch of Panzers and does a mission in France with Skorseny, where they're gonna use chemical weapons on a munitions plant. And here you can see Heinrich Jäger is developing as a character. So he thinks that what the Nazis are doing to the Jews is wrong, and he's also uncomfortable with killing all of these innocent civilians with these chemical weapons. Skorseny, he doesn't really care. He takes orders and moves on. So kind of psychotic, and he really enjoys his work. But Heinrich Jäger, yeah, driving Panzers, he witnesses one of the atom bombs, and yeah, he's doing his job, but he has some reservations about them. But he doesn't really speak them that often, but he tells them to some crewmates from time to time. Molotov, who is the second in command in the Soviet Union, get him seeing a bunch of different diplomats, so he meets up with Ribbentrop, who reveals to him, and Molotov looks down at Ribbentrop. He is considered stupid by him, that the Nazis, even though they blew up their nuclear pile and Heisenberg is dead, are very close to getting new nuclear weapons. And Molotov lies and says the same thing. And he goes to the United States, I believe, and he speaks with some of the diplomats there also. And one time he is seeing Joseph Stalin, and both the Nazis and the Americans have nuclear weapons that they're using against the lizards, and the lizards are replying back with them. And Stalin is furious that they don't have nuclear bombs, and Molotov says, yeah, but we can't. They're doing their best, they're working, they actually managed to form one nuclear bomb, and Stalin uses threats and to try to get what he wants. But Molotov actually shows some spine this time and says, do whatever you want with me, but you liquidate this crew, it's over. And Stalin acquiesces to this. Or, he doesn't really acquiesce, he says, we'll see. So a bit ominous. So yeah, Stalin, really a horrible guy. In the United States, you've got Groves, who is this tough engineer, general now, and leader of the nuclear weapons project in the United States, who is surveying the different physicists. And Larson is away on a mission to see if Hanford, Washington will be a good place or not for moving the nuclear weapons laboratory, but the nuclear weapons laboratory are making great advancements. So he's gone to Hanford, Washington, and he likes the doctor there, who's a woman, because she cures his sexual disease. So he proposes that they should be in Washington when he returns. But Groves basically says, no, we're not gonna do that. We've made great advancements. We very soon will have nuclear weapons. And he's kind of angry. You get the feeling that Larson wants to kill a bunch of people. He wants to kill Hexam, Groves, Oscar, that bodyguard, and he wants to kill Sammy Eager, the ball player, and his wife, Barbara Larson. He really wants to pay them all back, but he hasn't done it yet. And he's considering to defect to the lizards. And he snaps eventually. So he goes to see Groves one final time and says, we should move to Washington. And he says, no, take the day off, and then tomorrow we're gonna work hard at the laboratory. And they already have made a nuclear bomb called the Fat Lady in Denver, Colorado, and they deploy it in Chicago against the lizards. And the lizards reply back by sending an atom bomb to Seattle. So now Chicago and Seattle are destroyed, but the Americans have nuclear weapons, and the Nazis have done the same thing. They've withdrawn their troops from Breslau, let the lizards come in like a fly going to a light, and boom, sent an atom bomb, killing a bunch of the race. Larson dislikes that there's been this nuclear progress without him, and he eventually snaps when he is biking, he has his bodyguard Oscar behind him, he's going home, and he meets up with Colonel Hexam. Hexam, as a soldier, isn't likable at all. I mean, he's hierarchical. So he says, what are you doing? We're going back to General Groves to find out what's going on, because I don't believe that you were allowed leave. And he questions Oscars about it, and Oscar says that it was Larson who told him, so not Groves himself. So in response, Larson, instead of going back, he pulls out his rifle, he shoots Oscar in the head, who didn't know what hit him. Colonel Hexam, he reacts with his face, but is also gunned down with a shot to the head. So Hexam, yeah, he's dead. I don't really care about him, but it's too bad that Oscar died, because he was a good soldier, I would say. So now he leaves east to go to the lizard, and the guards let him pass through because they don't know what happened. Colonel Groves thinks, crap, what are we going to do? We need to get him before he reaches the lizards. Because if the lizards find out what is happening in Denver, Colorado, goodbye the city, boom. So you've got a new character we've seen previously, but not his point of view. Captain Rance Orbach, he has a man serving in his unit. They are cavalrymen on horses. They track down Larson, get into a shootout with him. He wounds two of them, but is eventually gunned down when he thinks he's hearing his wife, because he hears a woman scream. And he's shot multiple times. He's shot once in the head, one is in the stomach, and once in the chest. So now Jens Larson is dead. So he's the character in the book who dies. And you've got the soldiers like Mott Daniels, and you've got the soldier characters like Mott Daniels. He gets shot in the butt and doesn't really like that the corpsman is an African American, and that his doctor or medic or whatever it was is a homosexual. So you can see that he has these southern old-style views. Atvar is panicking. There are a bunch of nuclear bombs that have been dropped. Both the United States and Nazi Germany have them now. And oh yeah, I forgot to say this. Tirtz, when he escaped from Tokyo, he revealed that there was nuclear research there. So they launched an atomic bomb and Tokyo is gone. And if there was one group that deserted it, it was the Japanese, I would say. Because, yeah, they're really harsh. So that's the story. Atvar is panicking. You've got a mutiny. You've got Nazi Germany and the United States who are mass producing bombs. A bunch of cities and towns have been destroyed by them. They have to consider how we're going to use the bombs. The race, that's what the race is thinking, because they want to have this planet habitable for a colonization fleet. Atvar is adverse to criticism, but is beginning to understand it's not going to go that well for a race in this war. So that's the third installment. So how would I rate World War Upsetting the Balance? I would give it a 9 out of 10. So it's better than the previous two. And that is because it has a lot of great scenes, which shows how characters develop. So we have seen how Jens Larsen has evolved from a good guy to a bad guy, and we get to see how Heinrich Jäger has evolved from a typical Nazi soldier to a one that is questioning the establishment and has some reservations. We get to see that Li Han is collaborating with the communists. We get to see how the race are reacting to these changing dynamics with Usmak, who becomes enraged and commits the mutiny. So there's a lot of dynamic characters in this book. The characters are greatest, I would say, in this book compared to the previous two. And there aren't really any myths in this book put in like the previous one. It doesn't really bring up the historical subjects, but it takes it down to an emotional level for characters themselves and how they feel this book. And that's what's great about it. So it's a 9 out of 10. We get to see how a character can turn good or bad or start questioning the establishment. So 9 out of 10. So Harry Turtledove, I have a very good feeling about how this series is going to continue. This was the Avid Reader's review of World War Upsetting the Balance, written by Harry Turtledove in 1996. I hope you readers enjoyed this book review, and I will see you readers next time.